Welcome to the Dr. Dad's podcast, where a naturopath and chiropractor come together each week to share lifestyle medicine, health advice, and inspiring interviews with some of the top experts in health and wellness, bringing you the latest in nutrition, exercise, ancient healing, toxins and detox, your microbiome, mindset, hormones, brain, and much more. Stay tuned. We're going to teach you how to experience growth daily.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Dad's podcast. I'm here with same guy every week, Dr. David Wardy. How are you?
I'm great, brother. Happy New Year, man.
Yeah. Happy New Year. It was definitely we're due for a new year, and the time is right. We're here in this new version of 2021. How you feeling?
I'm excited, man. I think I'm done with 2020, like most of who's listening right now. I think people are ready just to clean the slate and see what the new year looks like. So yeah, I'm pumped, man. I'm looking forward to this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't help but think like every year, my wife Sonia and I, we always think of a word for the year as something that sort of encapsulates an energy or a creative force that we want to apply to the year ahead. And so I might ask you later in the podcast if you've sort of tuned into that, or maybe we'll talk about it another time. But mine this year for me is inquiry, and it's been other things in the past, but I'm really. It's more like self-reflection, self-inquiry. You know, what's triggering me, what's challenging me, and asking who's asking the question. And I think it's going to be an interesting year with that kind of energy, as opposed to, stuff in the past. Like I've used the word discipline in the past and consistency and that kind of thing. But I want to find out what's driving the bus, what's behind. So that's my word of the year.
The power of looking within.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. And speaking of looking within, we've got a special guest on the podcast today because we're going to be looking within the cell, which is one of our favorite topics. We're going to be talking to an extremely intelligent man. He's put a couple decades of research into compounding, and we were just chatting before we got on the call that he's pulled in these philosophies from different schools of thought, from TCM to Ayurveda to African herbs and things like that, and has found ways to coordinate and synergize a lot of these different nutraceuticals and herbs and things like that can be used together in very specific formulations. And his name is Robert Lamberton, and he's been an advocate for natural medicine for a long time. He's a consultant for doctors and giving advice and feedback on different therapeutic approaches to support a treatment program. So we're super excited to talk to Robert today, and we're going to be diving into NAD, and I'll get him to explain that in much more detail. So Robert, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, Nick, it's a pleasure, and thanks very much for the invite. I look forward to being able to share some exciting information, I think, with the audience, and some information that I believe they might find of benefit in terms of optimizing their own health.
Definitely. Well, so we're in a world right now where people are starting to really care about longevity and anti-aging, and how to live more gracefully with more vitality. And it seems like every book you look into, whether it be lifespan to the bulletproof diet, or you start seeing this word NAD pop up everywhere. So I'm curious, what got you looking under the microscope at this particular molecule?
Well, NAD, which is an acronym for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, is a compound that has certainly started to garner some attention. And I'm a biohacker, so some people may not be familiar with that term. It's basically somebody that likes to hack into their own biology and to work on optimizing it. That can be done different ways, obviously, in terms of lifestyle, but you can be looking at labs in terms of results. And I'm always looking to optimize my own health, but also to be able to help clients that I work with, and to look at potentially providing some of these compounds in formulations that could help the general population. And NAD has certainly started to generate a lot of published research in the literature. And I'm always looking for things that can have an impact on the aging process. So we all know about the concept of lifespan, how long we live, but much more important, I think more and more people in the general population are coming to understand this term, it's more about health span. And health span is basically the amount of time in our lifetime that we remain healthy up until sort of those end stages. And obviously, what we're facing these days, as you know, is we have lots of older individuals that have ended up in care facilities that have considerable issues with regards to their mental acuity. They are dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's, and they may have difficulty with mobility too. And it's just a very sad and unfortunate condition that people may end up dealing with. I mean, I'm dealing with that in my own family, obviously, and I think most people probably could relate to that sort of thing. So NAD is one of these compounds that has been shown in published research in certain animal models to have a significant impact with regards to this whole health span consideration and potentially lifespan too. So it was certainly of interest to me to pursue that and investigate it.
Now, I've had some experience with NAD, but there's like this laundry list of things that it's being utilized for, and there's a lot of research looking into things from all the way from longevity and cellular health of mitochondria to obesity, fatty liver disease, and a number of things like that. Can you talk a little bit about how this is being utilized in medicine as we speak right now?
Sure. Well, there's different delivery systems that are being used. Typically either oral or intravenous application. In oral form, typically it comes in a capsule form, although the powder is quite palatable itself. And then intravenously, obviously in clinics. And it's being used, as you suggest, for a wide spectrum of different conditions, because it really has an impact on some foundational processes in the body that can have an effect on many different mechanisms in the body. So it is a compound that will have an impact on everything from exercise to some of the conditions that you mentioned, mitochondrial health, which are the furnaces in our cells that create energy, is being used. I know, Nick, you're quite involved in helping people to overcome addictive conditions. It's being used for inflammation and just a whole spectrum of different conditions.
So can you take us back to how this one particular thing can be used for so many things in our bodies?
Sure.
Because you don't see that often, right? I mean, there's this thing, it covers a lot of ground.
Yeah, so it's a compound that's present in every cell in the body, and it has a significant impact on many different metabolic processes, and a lot of proteins in the cell depend on it to be able to work effectively. And one of the key considerations with regards to what it does is it will actually have an impact on some specific genes. And these specific genes are called the sirtuin longevity genes. And these particular genes, as the name suggests, are really important for aging in a healthy way, and they will impact on longevity. So like a lot of compounds in the body, as we age, the production and availability of NAD, just like hormones and other compounds, tends to diminish. But with NAD production and availability in the body, it's more significant. There's a very specific process that happens in the body. I won't get into it right now because it's somewhat complicated, but to put it into perspective, at the age of 50, the average person, their NAD levels are down 40%. And at the age of 80, they're down 90 to 98%. So it's basically gone. And where that creates a problem is these sirtuin longevity genes are really important for healthy aging. So as an example, I won't go into the detail on the sirtuin genes, but one of them is quite involved in the cardiovascular system, the vascular system. And what happens is if there's not adequate NAD in the body, then it actually accelerates the vascular aging process. So this is obviously going to impact on the cardiovascular system, but if you think about it, the vascular system, the cardiovascular system, actually delivers nutrients and oxygen to virtually every cell in the body. So this is actually going to have an impact on virtually every cell in the body with regards to if there is a deficiency, it can have a negative effect on virtually every cell in the body.
Superhighway, man. We always talk about the circulatory
Right.
system. Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal, and nobody ever really highlights it that way. I love the way you say it, but absolutely true, right? I mean, you have that one breakdown of that system, and you're going to have this onslaught throughout all the systems, and we're going to have this massive amount of dysfunction all the way down to the cell.
Exactly.
Nick, I'll let you jump in, man. I asked a few questions. We're talking roughly about just, he took us back to how it's used, and then it covers a lot of ground as far as things that people are utilizing it for right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's incredible to think that, is there like a fountain of youth, or if there's like the thing that can have such a profound impact. And, obviously there's nutrition, there's lifestyle, there's decreasing toxicity, stress. And I think a question that a lot of people have with regards to the aging process, and I love how you spoke to it in relationship to health span versus lifespan. I think that's a really important qualifier that
Right.
people could, anchor into. Tell us, because a lot of people are aware that antioxidants are probably a good idea. Is NAD an antioxidant, and is it something that can be used as in conjunction, or does it need antioxidants in order to run? Like, can you speak about that relationship?
Sure. So it doesn't need antioxidants to be able to provide its benefits, but it does have antioxidant properties. And it also has anti-inflammatory properties. But I would suggest that probably one of the benefits that many people notice is an increase in energy, because it has a direct impact on the function of mitochondria. So as an example, we have a product out on the market, Procera, and we market this primarily to healthcare practitioners, primarily naturopathic doctors, but also some medical doctors, chiropractors, Chinese medicine doctors, etc. And myself and my partner, we're very well connected in the community, so we have lots of friends in the community. And so when we first got a whole access to the product and got it out in the market, we gave it to a bunch of our buddies first. And a lot of these doctors know a lot about health, and provided they practice what they preach, you'd expect that most of them are in good to excellent health, and these would be primarily middle-aged to low-age senior practitioners. We got it out to them, and then within, without exaggerating, within 24 to 72 hours of getting back to us and saying, I can't believe this surge in energy that I got from taking the product. I typically, as an example, one naturopathic doctor here in British Columbia, who in the past has been quite a high-profile athlete. He went to the Commonwealth Games in rowing, and he suggested that if you haven't been out on my bike for several months, I just feel so tired and fatigued after a long day at the clinic. I got on my bike, went out for a ride, and exercised intensively, and I came back, recovered quickly, and I felt like going out and exercising again. Plus, also my focus and mood have improved dramatically. So we're seeing this from a lot of practitioners. Now, I can't suggest that everybody that takes a product will realize those benefits, but we were quite shocked at the rapidity with which we're getting this feedback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's excellent. So what do you think are some of those factors that maybe deplete NAD a little bit quicker, and maybe what are some of the factors that people might notice? Like, is it the fact that these people are maybe more depleted than some others, and so when you add it in, it's kind of like the body's very happy it's there and it starts to utilize it? Or so sort of two questions there. What do you think is depleting it more quickly in some individuals, and why do you think some people respond a little bit quicker or have more noticeable effects?
Well, when we start thinking about deficiencies, certainly general health principles would be applicable with regards to what might be problematic. So most people would be familiar with some of the key health principles in terms of obviously stress, exposure to toxins. I mean, toxins can take the forms of chemicals, heavy metals, but also things like EMF radiation, exposure to blue light at night, which throws off our wake-sleeping cycle, referred to as a circadian rhythm. Certainly, lifestyle is important. So exercise is one activity that can significantly positively impact on NAD levels. So if people are inactive, they're not helping their body to produce NAD. Certainly the type of diet that people eat. So I think most people have some familiarity with what would be a healthy diet. So people are eating a lot of food compounds that do not have a positive impact on health, that can create inflammation and have toxic compounds in them that can certainly deplete NAD levels. Certainly lack of sleep is another consideration. Alcohol consumption, having elevated inflammation in the body. Most people associate inflammation with when you would have an acute reaction to hitting your thumb with a hammer. But what I'm more referring to is systemic inflammation, which tends to increase as we age. So it's just a generalized inflammation throughout the body. So quality of water would be another consideration. So all the different aspects to leading a healthy lifestyle would certainly contribute to being able to optimize NAD levels and to be able to maintain those levels at an optimal level as much as possible as we age. But you know, the numbers don't lie. I mean, if you're not supplementing with some sort of an NAD precursor, then as the statistics, the published research suggests, your levels are going to deplete dramatically to the point by the time that you're the age of 80 years of age, it's almost pretty much gone, which can have a significant negative impact on our health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, these are the things you listed off are some of these concepts or topics of affecting performance that David and I talk about so often. And so it's nice to get that highlight again for people to tune in to the fact that our environment has such a profound impact on how our cells adapt or don't adapt very well as a result. And so this is definitely one of those nutrients that becomes extremely, or fast-tracked in its depletion as time goes on. And I mean, and I'm glad you brought up alcohol too, because, NAD from the research I've looked at is directly involved in alcohol dehydrogenase, one of the enzymes needed to break down NAD, which is why NAD has been used in recovery from addiction to alcohol for such a long time. And there's lots of different clinics around North America that definitely use that, including ours. Now there's a lot of products that are on or online or they're available. What can you explain? Like some products use NADH, some products, talk about if you could talk about maybe that versus using precursors, as you sort of alluded to just now. Can you kind of talk about some of the different forms and precursors that one might find for NAD?
Sure. So for the most part, there are three primary compounds out on the market currently. The most popular here in North America is something called nicotinamide riboside. And then there's another compound called NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide. Nicotinamide mononucleotide is very popular over in Asia, but not here, and the reverse. Nicotinamide riboside is very popular here, but not over in Asia. Those are precursor compounds, so they get converted into NAD in the body. The compound that we launched the market, Procera, is likewise a NAD precursor. Our compound includes niacinamide, which is the B form of the vitamin, which we actually are able to create some NAD in our bodies from, but it's a slow process and there's limiting steps to that. It also includes some D-ribose. D-ribose is a well-known compound that has specific benefits to things like exercise and people that have compromised cardiovascular systems. And then the third compound that we use in our product is an oil product, the palm oil product, which is a carrier product. So the issue with regards to NAD is you'll sometimes see companies advertising NAD that you can purchase to consume. The problem with that is that gets processed in the gut through the digestive process, so it's not actually available. It's not bioavailable. So in essence, you're wasting your money when you buy something like that. There are certainly pluses and minuses to the other compounds, but the research is quite definitive in that these precursor compounds work quite well with regards to increasing NAD levels in the tissues. So that seems to be the best approach currently available on the market, for sure. And as you know, Nick, because you utilize the modality, it can also be administered intravenously, which is a completely different administration. We can talk about that if you want. But you know, the supplement varieties of NAD precursors are readily available, and yeah, they're providing a lot of health benefits for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, David.
Well, no, he was talking about the IV, and I've had my experience with that. And I was just going to speak because we were talking about energy before. So I was in Vancouver last year, and Nick hooked me up to an NAD IV before we went out to men's camp. And that was quite an experience, just going through the IV process with that particular. But it was what came after. So Nick's like, man, you're going to have all this energy. You're just going to feel really good afterwards. And man, I felt like I was floating for about a week after he gave me that IV. Like there was a significant change in my energy levels and my awareness and just crispness of how I felt. So for sure, I mean, my question to you is, I mean, I know intravenously is probably one of the better ways you can get it, but I mean, if somebody wanted to just take this daily, what's the best delivery system for them to do that? Is there a better delivery system if we couldn't get an IV regularly?
Well, my suggestion would be that oral consumption of NAD precursors will provide the same benefits and the same outcomes that you would get with an IV administration. Okay. You know, there's challenges obviously with IV administration, as both of you would know. You know, it's I think one of the key considerations is the infusion takes a long time. It typically takes several hours, and it can really run up a lot of costs, whereas the supplements are relatively inexpensive and just about anybody can afford them. So I would suggest that taking the NAD precursors is the most effective way for the average person to be able to utilize the NAD considerations in terms of optimizing their health.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's so for those of you who have never had an NAD IV, it's extremely uncomfortable. It feels like you're gonna maybe throw up. Feels like you've got almost like an anxiety attack. There's a lot of pressure in your chest. I know every time I give myself an NAD IV, I'm sneezing and feeling like I have to run to the bathroom. It's this mixture of a ton of different things, and yeah, that's the case. I mean, it's cost prohibitive for a lot of people doing the IV. It's uncomfortable. But there's something kind of magical about NAD IV as well, in that you kind of feel like you went through something challenging, and there's almost like this adaptive response that the body gets into. Like it's almost like a hormetic stress that provides this shift in the body. And so yeah, when we're running a program too, we would be doing oral administration, we'd be doing suppository. I haven't yet utilized a patch, but I've seen some applications of an NAD patch, and then obviously with the intravenous. But I totally agree. I think it's important in this day and age to really consider that concept of health span, and if we can have more juice in the tank, to prevent, issues from showing up as we age. I think that's of huge importance for so many people. So I think oral supplementation is a great idea. Can you speak a little bit more to, so you talked about the niacinamide, one of the precursors that's in the Procera product. Can you talk a little bit more about ribose? Because, I think when people hear ribose, they might think like, I don't know, deoxyribonucleic acid, or they might think of like, I don't know what people think of when they hear ribose, but can you speak to a little bit more about what the role of ribose is and how that plays a role in the formation of NAD?
So D-ribose is a sugar compound, and it was originally developed several decades ago for providing potentially life-saving benefits during cardiovascular procedures. They were getting a lot of individuals dying or having severe problems, and they were able to come up with this compound that has a key role in some of the applications that I suggested, specifically for exercise and also for cardiovascular health. And it's been out in the market for many years now. It's kind of has a sweet taste to it, but quite mild. That's why when I'm taking Procera myself, I just take it off the spoon. It tastes quite pleasant, actually. But it's involved in a lot of pathways in the body, and provides a lot of different benefits. And people have been using D-ribose for decades now, and they find it is especially beneficial for people that, as I mentioned, have cardiovascular health issues. It can be dramatic and life-saving for some people, but also in exercise too, because it has a positive impact on the cardiovascular system.
So it's sort of playing a role as being a supportive nutrient. It's not necessarily, is it enhancing absorption? Like I'm just a little curious for, those listening, they're considering a precursor product to use.
Right.
Like, how does it play a role on like delivery, or is it not really a delivery thing? It's more of a supportive nutrient that synergizes really well with NAD.
It's a compound that, and I don't want to get too complicated here, but there's different pathways with regards to how NAD can be produced in the body. Mm-hmm. And in this pathway, which we access for the Procera formulation, D-ribose is one of the compounds necessary in that pathway. So providing exogenous or supplemental D-ribose just helps to prime that whole biochemical pathway process. Mm-hmm. If we were to rely on the body to be able to supply that, some people may be deficient, so it wouldn't work as well. So it's providing, facilitating the production of NAD, but obviously at the same time, D-ribose has its own health benefits. We're certainly not providing the dosage that you would if you're taking D-ribose by itself, but it's an integral part in that pathway. And that's a very different process from some of the other compounds out on the market.
Yeah, definitely is. Go ahead, David.
I'm curious where palm oil is playing a role here. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's just used as a carrier compound in terms of, they found that by including palm oil, that they were actually able to achieve higher tissue and cellular levels as opposed to not using a carrier compound like that.
Okay. And another question I have is, where are they measuring these levels? Are they extracting intracellular levels, or is it blood levels, urine? Like, how are they capturing the changes?
Primarily at the tissue level, actually. So they'll actually do biopsies in terms of some of the different areas of the body, some of the muscle tissue, etc., and evaluating it from that perspective.
Okay, cool. So let's take an example of a 50-year-old man who moderate amount of exercise and activity, what would be an ideal dose, let's say, of the Procera product for someone like that, from a health prevention and optimization point of view?
Yeah, so the product that we have out in the market comes 60 capsules per bottle, and the usual or recommended dosage is 2 capsules in the morning. We recommend taking it in the morning because it does produce energy. So if you take it too late at night, it can create stimulation, which actually may make it difficult to sleep. And I actually got caught up with that about 3 or 4 nights ago. I forgot to take my Procera early in the morning, so I took it about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and sure enough, I had trouble sleeping that night. So now what we actually suggest to some of the practitioners that we work with is that if they've got a really challenging case in terms of a patient that's doing a lot of stuff, that they may consider doubling up on the dosage temporarily over the first 2 to 4 weeks or so, just to get some more of a loading dose. But typically 2 capsules per day is adequate for just about everybody. I mean, obviously, people's response to different types of nutritional supplements varies. So I've certainly heard of some individuals that find that just using 1 capsule seems to be enough for them. If they take 2 capsules, it seems to be too much in terms of they get too much energy. But for the average person, 2 capsules per day in the morning seems to work quite well.
Okay, that's great. Go ahead, David.
Doc, can you talk a little bit about how Procera is different than some of these other products on the market and how it affects ATP and glutathione levels?
Yeah, so without going into detail, there's different pathways, as I mentioned, and this combination of ingredients actually utilizes a direct pathway, whereas some of the other compounds available on the market, some of the other formulations, take an indirect pathway, and it is more of an issue because what happens is it requires ATP. Now, our formulation with the D-ribose helps to generate ATP. So when you're requiring ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is a compound that's necessary for energy production, should probably include that because everybody would know what ATP is. So, well, with this pathway, it requires the availability of ATP, and often, especially in people that are dealing with a lot of health issues, they don't have a lot of excess ATP, and from that perspective, it may not work as well. Also, too, what some of the published research suggests is that some of the compounds on the market may compromise the function of glutathione being the master antioxidant in the body, very important for detox. And also it may have a negative impact on cortisol levels too. So those are some key considerations in terms of some of the differentiation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's helpful. Is there any research that you've looked at, using NAD for different populations? You mentioned cardiovascular health and whatnot, but is there any studies that you've looked at that you've been quite impressed with in the role of NAD?
Yeah, certainly. Neurodegenerative conditions comes up a lot in the literature. So pretty much across the spectrum, but one key area that seems to be benefited dramatically with NAD supplementation or NAD precursors is Parkinson's. Now, taking NAD precursors will actually help to increase dopamine production, but not enough to counteract the deterioration that happens in Parkinson's. But as both of you know all too well, one of the key challenges with people that are dealing with Parkinson's is a lack of energy. They just have no energy. And good example I can give, and you actually know this individual, I won't name them, Nick, but a client of mine here locally had some mild tremors, and she runs her own business, and she would find that she could work for about 4 or 5 hours during the day, and then she just gets so fatigued that she couldn't carry on. And we got her on the Procera, and all of a sudden she could work 8 or 9 hours per day without any challenges whatsoever in peak energy and performance. And when people find or realize the benefits that they get from optimizing their NAD levels, they really enjoy that enhanced productivity, energy level, performance, or whatever. And it's quite humorous sometimes, because I have clients around the city here in Vancouver where I live, and if they run out of their Procera, they'll literally chase me around Vancouver if I'm out driving around or whatever, and I meet up with them, and we're in the parking lot. I feel like I'm doing a dial-a-dope operation because I give them their Procera, and they got to pop 2 capsules right away. It's humorous. So anyway, this particular individual, what we did was we got in an initial amount of the material to just do some testing on and get a few people on it, and then it was. And then we got in our main bulk supply, and there was a 2-week period where we didn't have any, and she ran out, and she got quite upset because her comments were, "I can't go a day without Procera. It makes that much of a difference in my lifestyle." So it was quite dramatic. So certainly the neurodegenerative conditions, it's being researched extensively now for things like Alzheimer's and dementia and Huntington's, and also for type 2 diabetes. It seems to have some significant benefit. Heart failure, hearing loss also. As you're familiar, Nick, although there's been a lot of information published on it, certainly the clinic experience has been that it seems to be quite effective with helping with cravings in terms of
big time.
Specifically within the brain, cutting out those craving responses, which are, as you know, are so difficult with the whole addictive process. Also, exercise is something that comes up frequently. When they did some studies in mice, what they did was this is an interesting study. They supplied some NAD precursors to mice that would have been the equivalent in age of 70-year-old humans. And what happened was that they had a dramatic improvement with regards to exercise capacity. In fact, it was between 56 and 80% greater exercise capacity compared to the control group. Now, I wouldn't suggest that you're going to realize the same improvements in humans. There have been some studies in elderly men, as an example, which showed about an 8% improvement in muscle force and a 15% improvement in fatigue associated with exercise. And certainly one of the things that people comment a lot about are, with regards to exercise, it's the recovery time. Because as you age, that becomes the biggest challenge, is it just takes longer to recover. So that's some, but there's many more. Cholesterol levels, chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia is another one that people certainly seem to see some benefit from. IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, the diabesity spectrum, so diabetes, obesity, inflammation, that sort of thing. Systemic inflammation, Lyme's disease, people have found some benefit with that. People have problems with digestion called malabsorption syndrome, Parkinson's, PTSD also, post-traumatic stress disorder, SIBO, small intestinal bowel overgrowth, bacterial overgrowth, pardon me. So, and there's lots more, but I went into PubMed, which is the main repository for published scientific medical research, and I typed in a search term, something like health conditions that can benefit from NAD, and it was amazing because it's almost like every health challenge known to the researchers came up. is many of them that I suggested, but lots more too. It's quite substantial. So, I personally take a lot of supplements. I'm a formulator. I have access to powders and potions and lotions and everything like that. And but I'd have to say, of all the compounds that I've tried, right now, Procera NAD precursor supplementation is my very top supplement. I won't go a single day without it because it makes such a profound positive benefit in terms of my quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in excellent health, so it just adds a little bit more.
Yeah, I love that. It's helpful for people to understand just, there's a unifying factor across all these illnesses, and it's this chronic onslaught to the mitochondria, right? There's this sort of thread that lines up a lot of these chronic illnesses, and it sort of dives into this mitochondrial dysfunction expression. And I mean, that's essentially one of the main roles of NAD, is to help support their expression, their activity, their proactivity. I mean, one of the examples that David and I often refer to is the process of fasting. And there's some great information to show that fasting alone, that stressor of caloric restriction, actually helps to increase your NAD levels. And who knows, maybe it's part of what you feel, that euphoria, that lift in energy, as enough time goes by and your ketones start to rise, and there's this coinciding rise in NAD. And it's actually, some of my patients know this, and so they'll prep for their water fast by doing a couple NAD IVs and loading up on the NAD beforehand, because it makes the water fast that much easier. So it's interesting to think of some natural provocateurs or provokers of NAD. What are some other ones that you may know of, whether it be, say, food-based, or I think you might have mentioned that exercise can be another promoter of NAD, but anything else that you want to add to that list?
Well, certainly the exercise aspect is important, because exercise can significantly increase NAD levels. In terms of compounds, there are some compounds. We talked about these sirtuin genes. There are actually some compounds that will work synergistically with NAD precursors to have a positive impact on these sirtuin genes. And the ones that are most widely known would be resveratrol, which a lot of people probably have knowledge about. And then there's also another one which is not as well known, called pterostilbene, which is related to resveratrol, and comes from blueberries primarily. So if people are eating lots of blueberries, they're getting some of those benefits from that. So that would be a couple that I would suggest.
Yeah, awesome. David, go ahead.
I'm going to backtrack for a second. I mean, you were reading out this laundry list of benefits, right? And we're talking about this energy production. But, my wife, she suffered with autoimmune for over a decade, and I can't help but think that if I had this at the front end of when she got sick, this would have been a home run for almost anybody who's suffering from any kind of autoimmune. Have you seen any research that's showing, I mean, you said fibromyalgia and a couple other things, but have you seen anything that's showing some really positive direct correlations to helping people from an immune standpoint?
Yeah, so NAD will actually have an impact, positive impact on a component of the immune system called CD38, and I won't get into detail about it, but it does have a positive impact on the immune system, and will help it to function more optimally. And yeah, I mean, as you both know as practitioners, I mean, autoimmune conditions have just exploded, and there's no simple explanation as to why that's happened. I think we all probably suspect that it has to do with changes in the environment and our exposure to environmental toxins, in addition to some of the lifestyle considerations that we mentioned earlier. But yeah, I think that obviously if people are dealing with autoimmune conditions, there can be a lot of stuff going on. and certainly energy production can be compromised, mitochondrial function can be compromised, and it can often cause disruptions with regards to the sleep-wake cycle, the circadian rhythm. There may be pain involved, so it may have an impact on sleep. Obviously, if there's a lack of sleep, then that's going to create an additional element that's going to cause problems. So yes, I would suggest that NAD precursors would be a great foundational compound that would be a benefit. So, when I'm talking to practitioners now, as practitioners, we all develop protocols that we have seen provide great clinical outcomes, whether it's blood sugar issues or cardiovascular conditions or whatever. But I'm of the opinion now, and I share this with the practitioners that I talk to, I'm of the opinion that if you don't address NAD levels, then you're missing a major component, because if you're not addressing that, that issue is going to be one of the components that causes the problem. So if you're not addressing that, you may have gotten a lot of the other causes resolved, but if you have not resolved the NAD level optimization, then that's still going to be there, and it can still continue to create problems.
Yeah, that's a really helpful way to look at it. And yeah, tell you what, when I've been consistent with, I've been taking the Procera regularly. It's here on my front desk, or my desk when I'm at work, so I pop it every day. But the consistency that I've noticed in optimizing with sleep, energy, mental focus, disappearance of cravings. When I'm on top of my NAD supplementation and or IVs, things just run smoother in general. So, and that would make sense given if you've got an increased capacity and functioning for receiving and generating energy, but also the units, the mitochondria that are driving that cellular function and cellular energy, that most things are just going to be performing better. So that definitely makes sense. Is there any other sort of last little tips or things that you'd like to discuss in regards to NAD that maybe we haven't yet chatted about?
Well, obviously, if we look at the health spectrum, lifestyle is the number one consideration, and certainly exercise is probably the number one activity that we can engage in terms of aging healthily. You mentioned fasting, which can provide tremendous benefits, but just basic things like sleep and diet and stress and that sort of thing. But I would suggest that you can't age optimally without some supplementation. It's just very difficult these days to get all the required nutrients that we need from the food that's available, even if it's organic, grass-fed, that sort of thing. And certainly the published research is quite definitive, suggesting that NAD levels drop dramatically as we age, and supplementing with an NAD precursor can optimize those levels. And by optimizing those levels, it can have a profound beneficial effect on pretty much the whole spectrum of your quality of life. So I think that's the most important takeaway for people to remember.
Mm-hmm. That's great. David, go ahead.
I'm ready to take some of this stuff, man. I'm going to start. Yeah.
Well, on that note, I guess, where do people access Procera? We sell it out of our clinic. Is it mostly to practitioners, or can you get it?
At the current time, we're primarily selling it through practitioners. Exactly.
Yeah. And so the Procera, I've tried the powder because of the mutual friend that we have. She actually gave me some of the powder, and to be honest, I think I probably took a big dose that day, but I was buzzing after. So I love the powder. I think I probably, like I said, just used a bigger dose. But do you sell both, or is it mostly in the pill?
Mostly in the pill, in the capsules for sure. But for you, Nick, we can make some marine.
Yes.
And you too, David, if you want.
Yeah, you may have to send me a care package down to Texas.
Sure.
Great. So so you basically have to reach out to your local practitioners to see if you can access the product.
If people want us to help them, our website is Integra Nutrition. They can reach out to ourselves, and we'll link them up with a practitioner and help them to ensure that they can get access to this wonderful product for sure.
And I would tell our listeners, if your doc isn't carrying it, give him information about it so that he can look into it, because I came across NAD quite a bit last year with Nick and learned a little bit more about it. But the more I learn about it, the more I'm starting to understand it is an essential that we all probably need to be taking almost every day at the top of that supplement list, like you talk, Rob. So, man, this was awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and to just sort of reiterate some of the literature that I've looked at or read in the books, and this is one of the, if not the core nutrient for longevity. I mean, it's the one that's most heavily sought after, and on that idea again, to anchor into that word health span. I mean, if we want to be proactive, preventative, the world that we live in obviously is flustered with fear, and if we can anchor back into prevention and mitigating a lot of that chronic stress that so many of us face, we can do that by optimizing one of these core nutrients in the body, and that's definitely NADs up there for sure.
I will also mention too, Nick, that there has recently been some published research that NAD optimization can have a positive benefit on some of the current health issues that we're dealing with. I won't name it by name for obvious reasons, but anyway, there's some interesting research that's come out.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, Robert, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and educating everyone who's tuning in on NAD. I've been looking forward to doing a podcast on this for some time, so it's great to be able to speak to an expert. So thanks so much for being on.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity. Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the Dr. Dads and share with your family and friends. You can also follow and interact with Dr. Nick and Dr. David on Facebook and Instagram for a daily dose of inspiration and the latest in health and wellness. Be well.